Hey all, Dan here again, and it's today's Ask Me Anything. Well, really kind of this week's Ask Me Anything. A couple things I'm going to be talking today. A little more in-depth topic we're going to cover. It's going to take a little longer than normal, but I think you're going to get educated out of it. So definitely pay attention. And yes, I did get my hair cut. That's the important thing. Anyway, let's dive right into it. Today's question comes from some gadget guy. Juan, he's a good friend. He's a fellow reviewer. He's brought up questions about, hey, why things, people are complaining about things aren't too loud or they don't match up, the volume things. And we get hundreds of questions about what's a safe listening volume, how should I listen? And even people look and believe me, I'm surprised. You read our website and you find out stuff about EN50332. So today we're going to cover all that. What is EN50332? How does it relate to sound volume? What is safe? All that kind of stuff. We're going to kind of condense it all today. So anyway, shout out to Juan today. You're going to see it down here. Here's a link on Twitter. Good guy. Go check out his videos. He's a great reviewer. So let's get right into it. EN50332. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Now, I'm going to come over here because I tend to be right-handed. This way I can draw on this kind of thing. So what I've got here is a pretty standard frequency response graph. You can see it starts, you got your amplitude. This is SPL over here. I should have labeled this. Always label your graphs, Dan. You're an idiot. Yes, I'm an idiot. SPL, this is frequency response going across here. That's what we look at. Typically, you're going to see curves that are all over the place. So what we're going to look at is what's good and bad. So from a volumetric standpoint, what EN50332 says, which is a European directive, it says you cannot have more than 100 dB SPL when you have 1 milliwatt of power in. More than that leads you, as a peak value, leads you into a potential for serious listening damage. Most music has what's called about a 15 to 20 dB crest factor. What that means is the peak to average level is about 15 dB down. So if you're listening to something that averages at 85, it's going to be peaking at 100 to 105. So they kind of said, hey, look, if your system is capable of reproducing 100 dB SPL, then it's probably on average going to be doing around 80 to 85 dB. That is at the level of, hey, if you listen to that a lot over several years, you're going to risk serious hearing damage. So don't go louder than that. That's kind of what EN50332 says. We'll cover more details about Bluetooth about it later. So what that means is, if you're in this range here, you're okay. As long as you're below this 100 dB SPL line, you're fine. If you're above it, you're bad. So if your headphone has a frequency response that looks like something like this, and it's an IEM, so it does that, yeah, you're going to be okay, kind of a thing. However, if your headphone comes in and it's up here in all of its graphs, you know what? It's too loud. These graphs are typically measured at what's called 1 milliwatt, which is a standard volume of listening. Where does that come from? Well, this is the limit, 1 milliwatt. That's what you got to listen to. Typically, it translates to 179 millivolts, 0.179 volts in terms of output. Power is voltage squared divided by resistance. So I got 0.179 times 0.179 divided by 32. It gives me 1 milliwatt. So if I put 179 millivolts RMS voltage into my headphone at any given frequency, I really shouldn't be much above 1 milliwatt if it's a 32 ohm load. That's what I want. And then I should be able to change that frequency and plot it out. That's how we get our graph. That's essentially what EN50332 says. If you're in this area with 1 milliwatt in, you're okay. If you're up here, you're not. Now, how many of you have played with your cell phone and you reset it, you do an OS update, and you start turning the volume up, and it says, hey, if you listen too loud, it could hurt your damage. Damage your ears. Be careful, right? That little warning, annoying thing that most people then just click through. That happens because the phone manufacturers also are instructed underneath the EN50332 to say that when they're going to generate more than 179 millivolts output, send a warning. So what that means is if my headphone at 1 milliwatt at 179 millivolts is below 100 dB, and my cell phone, when it hits the ability to generate more than 179 dB, 179 millivolts, tells me, hey, you're getting too loud, then those two in combination will warn me, Mr. Listener, that, hey, maybe I'm going to be listening to things too loud. That's where that annoying little warning comes from. That's all about protecting you, making sure you don't get too high. That is something we got to be. So that's basically what EN50332 says. It says you can't be too sensitive. In other words, I get too much output for a given input voltage, input power. I can't have too much. Otherwise, when the phone is being turned up, it won't warn me appropriately, and I could risk my damage. Now, earlier, remember I mentioned about Bluetooth, right? Bluetooth is very interesting because, well, it doesn't get fed a voltage from the phone. It gets fed a digital signal. Aha! EN50332 addresses that. The way it handles that, basically it says you can't send a level you can't set a level above 0 dB. In other words, that's the maximum you send. If you send more than that, that's like all ones in your bit stream. You can't send a bigger number than that. If your maximum number is 65,535, you can't send 65,536. It doesn't exist. So what they say is, when it's turned up all the way volume maximum, if I make Bluetooth headphones, Mr. Headphone Manufacturer, you better make sure your headphone doesn't go above 100 dB. So it limits how loud your headphone can get at full volume when you turn it up. That's oftentimes why people say, oh, this headphone, it could be plugged in, or it could take Bluetooth kind of things like that. When I plug it in and run it to my cell phone, it gets really loud. But when I run on Bluetooth, it doesn't get as loud. Again, that's EN50332 kicking back at you and saying, if you're above a certain volume on the digital scale, when you hit full scale, you can't do more than 100 dB SPL. However, if my phone can generate more than 179 millivolts, I could potentially generate more into an analog input. So that's where that disconnect happens sometimes. That's why Bluetooth, if it's built correctly, will never get really that super, oh my God, it's blowing my head out loud, but that's on purpose. It's to keep you out of this red area where it's too high and it could damage your hearing. That's the whole point. So I hope that clarifies a few things about what maximum volume could be, what is EN50332, and why the hell do we talk about it. And yes, we are 100% EN50332 compliant. All of our IEMs just kiss the limit or are slightly underneath it. That's kind of by design. It's what we do. We're professionals. But that's where that all comes from. That's how that little annoying warning on your cell phone works. That's how it all stills together. So I know this was a longer Ask Me Anything. I thank you for kind of letting me ramble through this whole thing and just kind of spew this stuff off the top of my head. I hope it's been informative, and you all have a good day. We will see you later. And again, if you have any questions, bang us out at Periodic Audio, at Periodic Audio on Twitter. We'll answer your AMAs, or send us an email at info@periodicaudio.com, and we'll put them in the list and get things rolled out a couple times a week, okay? Thanks all. Have a good day. See ya. Bye.